Once again, good evening, everybody. My name is Ferry. On behalf of Norea and also ISACA Netherlands, I would like to welcome you to tonight's webinar. It's about IT risk careers in 2023. Before we jump into the topic, as always, make sure that you turn off your microphone and also your camera. Make sure that you have your names on the teams actually exactly the same as the name that you put in your registration form. It will help us to speed up the CPE certificate process. And as you can see now that this session is recorded, and then later on it will be on our YouTube channel. We would like to take your attention to one of our training as well as the organization. It's about COVID 2019. It will be next month on the April 13th and 14th. For more detail, you can always go to our website, isaca.nl. And last but not least, don't forget next week. It is something that just came in today. Next week, we also have another webinar. So please register yourself for next week webinar. For today, we will have Lawrence. So Lawrence dedicated himself in the recruitment area on IT risk, audit, cybersecurity. And I guess for Norea and ISACA, it will be a pleasure to have him tonight to share his insight in the market, whether from the demand side or supply side, especially for those who are, in the search of new career or wants to progress. What is hot in the market at the moment? I guess Lawrence will try to answer that question today. So without further ado, I will hand it over my screen to Lawrence. Lawrence, please unmute yourself and then start sharing your screen.
Thank you, Ferry. It's an honor to give this presentation to you. Please let me know if the share of my screen works well.
Yeah, we can see the Canva, and then you can start present.
Yeah, and do you see me as well?
Yes,
Ferry?
Looks great. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, once again, it's an honor to give you this webinar, and I will talk a bit in the next hour about IT risk and IT security, and especially the trends that are ongoing in the labor market. And I want to focus on the threats and the opportunities that has come to this new era after COVID to explain what's happening in the market. A little bit about myself. I really enjoy meeting new people. So I would also like to invite you to interrupt me if you have a burning question. I really enjoy having more interactive presentations. So please feel free to ask your questions. Ferry will be the moderator in this. The passion for me to meet strangers goes quite far. Last year, I cycled alone on this orange bike from the Amsterdam football stadium to the football stadium in Qatar. So I traveled to 14 different countries alone. So from Amsterdam to Qatar in 3.5 months. And I met a lot of strangers. The second photo you see is in Jerusalem. The third photo is in Jordan, next to Petra, the Forbidden City. And the last photo is then in front of the football stadium in Qatar, where I arrived after cycling for more than 6,000 kilometers. So I really enjoy meeting new people. So please feel free to have a chat and speak up. I think we would all enjoy that.
Sorry, if I may cut a bit. Stephen Mathura, you raise your hand. Do you have already a question?
No, it was my mistake, sorry.
Oh, all right, then. Lawrence, please.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so the agenda for today, I will cover 3 topics. The first one is IT risk and IT security, the labor market in 2023. The second topic is the threats and opportunities in this new era. And the third one is the IT security careers. So in case you want to switch careers or you're already working in the industry, how can you upskill your career, and what is the role of certifications in all this? And then we end the last 10 to 15 minutes with Q&A, but again, feel free to ask questions during the presentation. So a bit about myself, I keep it very short. Thanks for the nice words, Ferry. I have a background from the University of Amsterdam, and then I started 2 recruitment companies, one for audit professionals, and later on, I discovered a big need for security auditors, and from that grew the second company I started, and that's called Cybersecurity Recruitment. So that's more on the IT security side. I started that together with a good friend of mine who's an ethical hacker. So we joined forces there. I've also been part of ISACA for a while for the ISACA Cybersecurity Nexus chapter. So that's to help people get certified on security certifications. And I've also been hosting meetups and podcasts called Cybersecurity Talks. So we have regular meetups in Amsterdam, and we soon going to be launch our 3rd season of Cybersecurity Talks. And there I have the honor to interview cybersecurity specialists, which I really, really enjoy. And last year I started yet another company, and that's called The Guardianship, and that's where we train cybersecurity professionals, so the next generation. So we do the training, and after a while, when they are trained and when they're certified, they become sort of cybersecurity consultants, but then very junior. So that's a bit about me in a nutshell. One question that came to my mind during my cycling trip is this one. And I will come back to that later during my presentation, but please already let it sink in. So IT risk and IT security, what has happened over the last years? Because in the labor market, there has been a lot of changes and developments. I think COVID really accelerated the digitalization. But what you saw in the beginning of COVID until recently is that it had a very positive effect for companies that wanted to keep their talent. So the retention rates were extremely low, meaning that people did not have the guts to switch careers during COVID. Of course, there was a lot of uncertainty, so people preferred to keep in their position. And perhaps they really didn't enjoy the company or the role anymore, but due to COVID, they decided to stay in that specific role and company. What you see now is that this positive effect has completely disappeared. We also see this from a recruitment perspective. The market is very active, so there are a lot of job rotations going on at the moment, and I think it's really at one of the highest levels we've ever seen. So there's a lot of movement in the market. So the positive effect from COVID has completely disappeared. And what you also see is that there's a lot of tension between companies that want to go back to sort of the pre-pandemic norms, while the employees really want to keep their freedom and newfound flexibility. And I'm also a company owner, so I can also tell that I struggle with giving my colleagues all the freedom and the hybrid working and workation. And on the other side, I also feel that that's part of the new digital era. So this is what people demand nowadays. But I can also feel the tension. So things have definitely changed. And I also see companies that have a modern way of looking at it. They seem to be winning the war on talent. So people seem to gravitate towards companies that have a more modern way of looking at how to treat employees and their benefits. And what we also see now, a very high level of resignations. Indeed, if there's a lot of movement, that also means a lot of resignations. And we also notice that the amount of freelancers is rapidly increasing. So people that aim for a better work-life balance, that they say, you know what, if I can earn a good buck with freelancing 3 or 4 days a week. I'm perhaps better off than working 5 days per week for an employer. So we see also that since COVID, there has been an increase in the amount of freelancers and contractors in the market. To zoom into IT security and cybersecurity from a global perspective, I think it's very important to put these two numbers underneath each other, because what you see is that there are close to 5 million people that work in a security-related job, IT security-related job. But on the other side, there is a big gap of cybersecurity workers, close to 3.5 million. I think we all know that there is a big talent gap, that there are a lot of cybersecurity vacancies out there. But seeing the amount of people that actually work in the field versus the amount of people that are actually necessary to fill all those roles, that's really a big number. So if you look for auditors or lawyers or people that work in the hospital, of course, there's also a big gap of workers available, but it's still a way larger number. There are probably 15 million accountants worldwide and perhaps 3 or 4 million vacancies available. But with cybersecurity, you see that 40% of all the roles is unstaffed. And that is something that worries me a little bit, because I think this is 40% shortage that's unprecedented. You would not see that in any other market that is so important for our society and our digital society. So that's why I thought it's important to give both of these numbers, that there's really a lack of 40% more or less. So that's quite something. So what the result is, of course, is that there's the global shortage of talent. Okay, we know this, but to make things slightly more concerning is also that this shortage will grow further. So it's expected that in the next 2 to 3 years, this shortage will grow, also the amount of vacancies, but also percentage-wise. So the amount of workers versus vacancies, that difference will grow even further apart. So that is something that I think we on a global scale should really think about. The result of this is that there's an intense battle for talent, and that salaries have really increased over the last 2 to 3 years. From a recruitment perspective, we also see that the salaries have gone up really a lot in this field, and I believe they will continue to do so. So that's more on a global scale. From the Dutch supply and demand, we see similar numbers. There's not been a lot of research on this, but what we see when we also speak with professionals, we expect actually that these numbers are even higher. The shortage is even higher in the Netherlands. I did at a meeting last year with a data scientist from the gemeente Amsterdam, and they calculated that for every senior cybersecurity professional, there are around 26 vacancies available. So one senior security professional equals 26 vacancies. And of course, the shortage for certain roles, especially the more seniors, because that's also a given fact that especially the demand for mediors and seniors in IT security and IT risk, those are the most urgent roles to be filled, and therefore there are the most vacancies available. So that's about the Dutch market. The trend is there definitely, probably, compared to the United States, where there's also a very big shortage. So to zoom in, okay, what kind of threats and risk does this form for, first of all, for companies? The main risk that is, the result of the difference in supply and demand is that a lot of companies have understaffed teams. And one of the reasons for that is not only the recruitment, because recruitment efforts, eventually companies will make a hire. So that is part of the issue, knowing that there's just not enough talent. So how would you find the right talent, and why would they want to join your organization? But a very big concern is also the retention amongst cybersecurity professionals, because 60% of companies struggle with retaining security talent. This comes from ISACA, the State of Cybersecurity 2022, rather big research. But that's also something to worry about, that a lot of people leave they kind of job hop also in this field. And because it's also a very high intensity job with the combination of a shortage of staff, burnouts are also quite common amongst IT risk and IT security professionals. So these are some things that won't help when you try to fill your staff. And what I mentioned earlier, also, there are more contractors in the market, and that would also mean for companies usually higher cost, and also the risk of leaving educated and trained people after a certain while, because contractors tend to move from one assignment to the other assignment. And all these things, of course, have eventually the outcome that the threat of your organization being hacked and your company trying to be compliant is very difficult in these times and in this market. And for instance, with the MKB, the medium to large size enterprises, 20% of those type of companies have dealt already with cyber crime and have been victim or had really big issues solving these cyber attacks. And for large companies, it's unknown because it's not always brought out publicly, of course. But there you find similar amounts, and I think for the medium to large companies, the attacks that happen there, they're not really tailored. So what you see with companies such as the banks and ASML, those type of firms, you really have state actors like Russia and China really trying everything they can to somewhere find a leak, so somewhere get into your organization. So it's a very targeted assignment that they put on your company name. That is super difficult to protect yourself against. So you really have to keep up with the states that you're actually trying to keep out of your organization. With medium to small to medium companies, it's more the low-hanging fruit. So the attacks are more automated. So they try a lot through phishing, through the emails and passwords that are available online. So there the attempts are not targeted. But what's then important to always be on an equal level or a higher security standard than other companies in your industry that would be targeted. So from especially the podcast that I host, I talk to a lot of professionals in this security field, and they say it's like running away from a hungry lion, and you're in a group of people, and you don't need to be the fastest person in that group, but you do need to be faster than the slowest person in that group, because the slowest person in that group will face being caught by the lion. So you need to have a minimum standard to stay away from where the damage actually happens. So you don't need 100% score, but you really need to be on an industry standard so that you're not the one that gets hacked by not a very well thought exercise, but just by an automated attack. So that's I think the main threat for companies, that if your teams are understaffed, can you give enough awareness trainings? Can you comply? And that's, I think, what companies need to worry about in this market nowadays.
Sorry, if I can come back to the previous slide about the time to hire.
Yep.
Because of this shortage in your recruitment experience, do you see that actually the time that a company takes to to process the hiring steps becomes faster, or actually still same old takes a bit longer time?
It's a very good question. I will directly go to that slide. This is the average time it takes to fill a cybersecurity position, and on the left side you see the amount of months, and the darkest blue is for the year 2022, and the light blue is for 2021, and green is for 2020. And you see an increase, a steep increase for the time to fill cybersecurity position has really increased. So most companies nowadays need 3 to 6 months to fill one vacancy. And still, some companies even takes longer than 6 months. So that there's not a positive development, but eventually most companies will fill that position. So on the last part of the infograph, you see that it's not impossible to fill the position in the end, but the majority of companies need 3 to 6 months, more or less, to fill a single position. So imagine if you have a whole company of cybersecurity professionals, then this is not a good development in that sense. Does it answer your question, Fer?
Not exactly, because I was asking more on the hiring process, right? I mean, because normally in the past, a company may take, I don't know, 5 steps of interviews. So it takes a longer. Sometimes the how do you call it? The candidate feels, oh, the process is too long. But then that's in the past. But I was wondering, how about now with all this pressure, let's say, to fill up this vacancies? Do you see any of your clients or your candidates actually see that, oh, the process now is even faster, maybe only 1 or 2 max interviews, then give an offer?
Yeah. One company that we really enjoy working with, it's related to Zero Trust. What they do, they have a first interview. If that first interview goes well, they already make a contract offer letter and they send it out the day after. If they have a good feeling about the candidate, they already send that contract offer letter out within 24 hours. That same week, they try to schedule the second and last interview. And if that second interview goes well, they say this offer letter from now on is valid. So now it's official. So they can go from making a hire in maybe 7 to 10 days, sometimes even in 5 working days. So this is really something that works extremely well. On the other side, last week I had a call with a big insurance company. They have a more lengthy process, and I also asked them how long does it take to make a contract offer. They say after the final stage, we need a minimum of 2 weeks to get all the approvals on the contract and have the contract sent over to the professional. So then I explained them also, but do realize with this market, and while you have other companies that do this two-way super quick round of interviews, they're out competing you. So do you take the gamble of having an interview process that probably takes 2 months in total? Because I think you will lose probably 80 or 90% of the people that you initially want to interview because you just take too long. So some companies do, and some companies sadly don't. And I think the results will be visible in the next year or two, that you see some people win the war on talent and some probably not. And it's a young field, so there are a lot of young professionals that want to tap into that market. And if then it takes 2 weeks to get approval on a contract, they also feel like, okay, but is this the type of company I want to work for? So I think it's very important to have a good hiring strategy to onboard cybersecurity talent.
Clear. Thank you.
No problem. To jump quickly on why is it difficult to retain talent? That a majority of professionals just gets recruited by other organizations. Half of them also mentioned that the incentives are not good, so the salary is not what they expected. Promotion development opportunities is also difficult. yeah, we don't hear that reason too often, I would say. But the high stress levels is definitely something that we hear a lot, and it's also a job that is kind of 24/7. If something really goes bad and you work in critical infrastructure, for instance, then you need to be on call sometimes as well. So it can also mean on weekends, please leave your phone on, because it's not that hackers only work Monday to Friday from 9 to 5. It's something that goes on 24/7. So that the stress levels is also something, yeah, that makes people resign, and sometimes resign completely out of the cybersecurity industry. This is what we already discussed, Ferry. Thanks for the question. Now I want to jump quickly into what are some of the threats for professionals currently working in the field or consider starting to work in the field. What we see a lot is that more young professionals become a freelancer or a contractor. And sometimes I'm really surprised, how is it possible that people with 2 or 3 years of experience become very well paid contractors? But it works. They also see this shortage, and they also know that this is a perfect market to become a freelancer. And what most of them very smartly do is really specialize. So they pick a niche within the field and get a couple certifications specifically on the niche they choose, and then yeah, they become contractors, which changes the market also in a way. What COVID did, I think, on a global scale, is also to things have become very much digitalized. So the borders have really disappeared, and that has led to companies making a decision to go offshoring or nearshoring, simply because the cost of labor is very much smaller. So you see a lot of security operation centers actually being somewhere in Eastern Europe or the Balkans and Sri Lanka, and I think India has always been a place. Sometimes I hear about Bangladesh even. So it's very widespread where offshoring takes place, and it's a trend that's happening a lot. Automation, of course, with AI and open chat, you hear a lot. I'm not sure if that's going to make a big impact anytime soon, but the automation is, of course, something that some roles within cybersecurity will also disappear. And lastly, you have the recent layoffs in the tech industry. But again, these layoffs do happen, but not really in the cybersecurity teams. We hardly ever spoke with people that said, I'm being laid off due to cost reductions, because yeah, with everything that you read in the cyber world, I think it's not recommended to cut budgets on cybersecurity, because then you become the slowest one in that group of people that are running away from that line. So I think the layoffs are not happening. So to summarize this slide, I think the threats for professionals are rather limited, but there's more competition coming from digital nomads, from people across borders, and probably due to automation. But I want to give some positive energy to to this presentation. I think this market is full of opportunities, both for companies. So a lot of companies might not provide a cybersecurity solution or service, but I think this is still an ideal time to pick up something and jump into this field, because there are a lot of opportunities. But when you do decide to do this, I would highly recommend to focus on recruiting and retaining talent. So make a good strategy around that, because if you have a decent proposition, but you're able to find talent in a better way, and also the talent wants to stay in your organization, I think then you really have a lot of good opportunities in this market. My tip I already explained a bit by answering your question, Ferry, but I think it's really how to design the right package. So the younger generation, for instance, doesn't really care only about the salary. I think for them, having a workation. I know a company that offers a workation for 2 months per year. So they are perfectly fine if people work 60 days remote during the year. And this is something that a lot of young professionals really love. So they don't care too much about the salary at the end of the day, but more about the secondary benefits. And that's why I find it interesting to study a bit what was the impact on COVID. I think the workation, the hybrid way of working, that has really changed a lot. And I think you can use that in your company as an advantage to recruit and retain. And some won't, but I think that will have negative consequences. What's also an important thing is to focus on what you have already within your organization, because I assume here we have a lot of auditors and IT auditors, people perhaps working in forensics or regular ITers that are probably interested to learn more about cybersecurity and perhaps are even willing to jump into the field and switch departments. So I think companies can first start with, hey, who do we have already with a nick for this or a drive to learn more about this? Because it's a young field, so people can upscale quite quickly, and then you know already, hey, this person is within the organization. There's a good cultural fit, a good company fit. So it's probably good to start there. If that doesn't work, then go outside. But I expect you will find good people that want to jump to your team. Does somebody recognize this picture? And if so, can you please speak up?
Just turn on your microphone directly if you know what picture is this.
Okay.
Or if you want to guess.
This is a painting from in the Netherlands we say in het land der blinden is één oog koning. So in the land of the blind, one-eyed is king. And I think this is a good way to look at the cybersecurity market at the moment. There's so much opportunity, and people with 1 or 2 years of experience are really considered sort of gurus at a certain point. So it's a young field, and if you tap into the field, I think there's so much opportunity there. And they're not a lot of seasoned professionals. They're all memes about you need 10 years of experience, but the technology only exists since 18 months ago. So there's a lot of movement, and if you decide to jump into it, you will find that in 2-3 years you are considered the knowledge source. So you can really upskill rather quick. So that's also would you be interested in starting or a career or switching into the field? I think that's definitely a good option for a lot of professionals. You can also try to scale your current activities as a freelancer, as a contractor, or perhaps as a business owner. The market is hot. Companies are the ones that are facing issues with onboarding people. So you're in a very good market. You're in a seller's market. So you can decide the terms a little bit more. And that's also when people are on permanent contracts within an organization. You can perfectly stay there. And I think, I don't want to push you, but when you would come to the moment that you say, I'm considering resigning, Mr. or Miss Manager, I'm thinking of leaving, you will find that they always try to make you a counter offer, because your position has become so important that they don't want you to leave at all. And they know it's probably going to take us 6 months to find a replacement. And then probably 3 or 4 months of that, we're left with no security people or a very understaffed team. So you can also negotiate without saying I'm going to leave, and then feel free also to look into what COVID has done, not only on the salary, but also at other working conditions, maybe working less, working more from home, working from a different country. So you can also play around with the secondary benefits, and I think that will become way more important thing for the next years to come. So how to switch, in case you would be interested to switch careers or tap into the field. Our advice would always be find the synergies between what you're currently doing and the IT security field. Because there are really a lot of synergies that you probably did not think about yourself already. What a lot of people think that's only for very technical people or only for script kiddies or very young and technology driven professionals. That is really not the case. So I would always think, okay, what's the overlap? What do I accelerate in my current role? And what kind of aspects would I find in an IT risk or IT security position? And what also helps is just to talk with some people that are working in the IT security department, that are your colleagues, or perhaps that work as a freelancer, or just some friends or people you know from ISACA, because they can also explain a bit more about what it takes to make that jump. And most of them are actually hiring, because many companies have cybersecurity vacancies. So by having the chat, you might end up discovering that there are vacancies available. But what is important to realize, also cybersecurity is very much about the soft skills. So it's not just for technical people. And if I look at the top 5 skills that are most desired, so that's what you see in this figure, is that the communication skills, critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork, attention to detail are crucial skills in this market. And I think everybody that is here tonight also has these skills. If you're an audit professional, if you're an IT auditor, if you're working in forensics, all these skills are also part of your profession at the moment. So I think the switch will be there, but your soft skills you can easily copy to the next field, and you already have these skills. So you don't have to start from zero. You can start already at a pretty decent position if you decide to jump field. What I would advise is when you enter, pick the skill that is really important within cybersecurity. So ideally, that's why I had a little picture on the left. Pick a blue ocean and a sea that's still full of fish, and there are not hundreds of other boats already in the same ocean trying to fish the same fish. So I think that's important to keep in mind. What are the technologies and the parts of cybersecurity that will grow and are currently important, but also in the next couple of years. I've done a lot of research. So with the Guardianship company, where we train young professionals and certify them, we did a lot of research. Okay, what is then the field that we should focus on? And we also came to the conclusion that cloud security is crucial, and that will have a very big market share for the next years to come. But we also discovered cloud security sounds very technical, but at the end of the day, it's just the data that you store on somebody else's computer, and that will also bring a lot of regulatory work, and audit processes will also start to focus on okay, where is this cloud environment, and how do you secure it? Not only AWS, but actually how do you secure it as a company? So there's also a lot of non-technical work available there. And for data protection, the second point, it's very similar. So Microsoft announced, I think a couple days ago, that compliance, they won't use that word any longer. They kind of call it data security. So it's this trend that data security and protection, that's going to be a very big field, considered similar to privacy, but this field is something that requires a lot of non-technical people. It's a lot about rules and regulations. So soft skills are a crucial part of this, and yeah, this would be, I think, an ideal field that's still a blue ocean for perhaps IT auditors or auditors to make a first switch, and then from there you can go in slightly more technical field. Identity access management is also closely related to that. Incident response is also growing, and that's simply because there are more successful attacks. So companies that need to respond to an incident, that also requires a lot of soft skills to perhaps negotiate what the ransomware would be. And in all these fields, except the last one, I would say, DevSecOps, that's a pretty technical field because you need to have a background as a developer. But the first four categories are very suited for professionals that don't have a very strong technical background. And to wrap this up, why it would be good to switch and why it's possible? Again, it's a very young field. So if you step into it now, I think for the next decades, you will reap the benefits from this, because it's a young field, but it won't grow old anytime soon. I don't think that in 3 or 4 years there won't be any hackers out there, because I think this is something that will have an impact on our society for many years to come. So I think it's a fascinating field to step into.
Lawrence, we have one question, or actually now becomes two. The first one would be, how long do you think the market will stay like this? Are we talking about 5 years ahead or 10 years ahead? I mean, like the gap or the dynamics that you see right now, that you presented right now. Is it something, just a short-term thing, or do you see it even longer?
No, the researchers, what the cybersecurity experts think is that this will continue for the next 4 to 5 years, so that this gap won't be solved anytime soon, and there's a big chance that the shortage will increase. But what I do believe is that technology will automate certain roles, so it eventually will balance out a little bit more. But the fact that there's so many successful hacking attempts currently, and that people say, I get more and more phishing emails. Yeah, the reason why you keep getting those phishing emails is that it pays off for the hackers and the criminals to do even more, because they seem to get away with it most of the times, and they're making a lot of money. So we haven't solved this as a society. The hackers are only gonna push their game to the next level. So it will stay around, and also the supply and demand, it won't even out. And last week there was even the situation where sort of a good hacker turned out to be a non-ethical hacker. So maybe some of you have read that, but there was a major theft by somebody that was pretending to be an ethical hacker, but he was part of being one of the most wanted hackers of the Netherlands. So even the good guys seem to be interested in seeing what can I get from the dark side. So it's gonna stay. Yeah.
All right. And another question is, it's about what can companies do to retain the current security people and make it attractive. I mean, you mentioned about earlier, like the package, not just about the salary, for example, but that would be mainly for attracting new ones. But how about to retain? Is there any specific ideas that you would like to share with the companies? What can they do to retain?
Yeah, good question. I think this slide is probably an important one. A lot of professionals seek knowledge instead of a salary. So of course that should be there as well, and across the whole area. The salaries are increasing, so yeah, please be aware of that. that you as a company should also at some point probably higher the salaries a little bit, but also the role of certifications is becoming important for the professionals. And what some companies very cleverly do is they pay for the certification. They sometimes pay for the study time on Fridays, and they treat you rather nice by saying, hey, you get a day to the spa, or you get €100 when you reach that certification. So they sort of make it into a gamification that you actually get rewarded if you get that certification. So then you really feel that the company wants you to get the certifications, while others are just like, yeah, okay, you can get it, but it's not really urgent. So probably next year we are okay if you get the certification. So it's just how you present it. I think if you gamify it a little bit, I think that works. And with a lot of IT people, I think they prefer working from home and having a nice setup. So yeah, good working from home system, and give them that freedom to work from home 3 or 4 days. Because yeah, some companies are fully remote when it comes to their IT security team. So if that's really important to them, I would advise listening to them and perhaps even start the conversation. Like, what's your ideal scenario? Because you don't want them to leave, because finding a replacement is going to be very tough. So I would with those things, perhaps offer a workation certifications. Those are some suggestions I would like to make. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. By the way, it's a bit 10 more minutes, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Now, this is also my last slide, so more or less at least. But the role of certifications and self-study, what works and what doesn't work, or what doesn't really help. If you look at the certifications that really add value and will boost your CV and also your knowledge, I think CISM and CISP, CISA, and ISO lead auditors. From the offensive side, you have the OCP. Yeah, those are just killer certifications that really makes you stand out. So that's just a quality stamp. It's very good to have them, and it's also very good to study them. But what you see, it takes a couple of years sometimes to get some of these certifications. So it can be quite a lengthy process. I would still advise to follow that path, and it might take a while. But if you're a new entrant and you think, okay, how can I show that I'm enthusiastic and that I know already a little bit, what certification would then work well? And what we see, a lot of people like the offensive side, so the red teaming, the hacking things. They play a lot of try, hack me, and hack the box. And they get the certified ethical hacking certification. And that's all nice, and you probably learn a few things, but companies don't know what it is most of the time, and it is just something you do for fun. So they think, oh, I show that I play a lot of Hack the Box, so companies will take me serious now. In our opinion, that's rarely the case. So also the certified hacker, it doesn't take a lot of study load, and it doesn't prove much. So I would not suggest doing that a lot, because it won't upgrade your CV that much. What we see a lot and what works quite well is to get vendor certification. So an obvious example is for instance Microsoft, but they have the AZ900, AZ500, and a whole bunch of certifications that are free, or perhaps €50 or €100 to get. And with that, you can quite easily get the certifications from a specific vendor, and then it shows, okay, I know the basics of cybersecurity because that's always covered in those certifications. But I do know a lot about this specific field. So Microsoft Security, for instance, which is used at all government institutions and in all hospitals. So there's so much demand for security professionals. If you show that Microsoft Security and have a couple certifications, then within a year or something, you can be already a contractor. That builds quite well just by getting a niche. So my recommendation would be focus on the big certifications that you see on the first bullet, and on the short term, and if you want to go into a niche, focus on the vendor certifications. That would be my tip. But stay away from hours and hours of Hack the Box and try Hackmeet. It won't add too much. That is pretty much my presentation. What I would like to give away for you as a takeaway, it's keep in mind what do you optimize for, and that brings me back to my first slide. When I was biking, I also realized I do a lot with the podcast and different companies, and it's super nice, but it's also very stressful. So then I told myself, okay, I'm gonna focus on trying to have a more joyful life. And I think a lot of professionals after COVID also felt I care about being in nature. I care to not have to go being in traffic jams to go to work. I enjoy that freedom, and perhaps it's not about the highest salary, but being happy with what you do, and also spend plenty of time with loved ones, and having the time to do the things that you like outside of work. And I think that's possible nowadays. Companies are becoming more flexible. So if I want to be a millionaire, or do I want to become a time millionaire, I pick the time millionaire. I think that fits perfectly well in what a lot of new joiners like as well. Become rich in time, because it's the most valuable asset we have. And that's how I would like to end my presentation. If there are any questions, I would love to answer them.
Cool. Thank you very much, Lawrence. So yes, time millionaire. Yeah. By the way, we have one question about the chances. So in the job market itself, as of course, large companies are fishing in the same pond with a small medium enterprises, for example. In your experience right now, how do you see these chances in the market? Have the small medium companies have a good chance to attract a talent as well, or always end up with the big and large companies? What is the trend right now?
I think for a lot of professionals, they want to surround themselves with other cybersecurity professionals. Again, it's to learn as much as possible. And I think building a team of security professionals, that's something that a lot of people value. So if you're a small to medium sized company, I think it's important to have a plan where you grow a team, because having just one cybersecurity professional will be rather difficult. But then professionals rather work for either a consultancy firm where you have a lot of professionals, or perhaps a bank where there's also a big cybersecurity team. So that's that is a challenge. I think if you have a small company and you show we want to scale and bring in more professionals, then I would say yes. But if it's the standalone roles, like the lone wolves, that there's just one security professional, that they also then brand the cybersecurity and privacy officer, those roles are in general very difficult to fill, because then you look for somebody that can do it all and has to do it all by him or herself, and that's tough.
All right. Maybe one last question. So I know maybe this is a bit more on the content side, not so much on the career, but I'll try. How do you see companies balancing between long-term defensive measures versus, keeping the lights on for the endless operational responsibilities? Based on your discussion with, let's say, people who wants to change jobs, for example, or through their managers.
I'm not sure if I understand.
Yeah, well, not yet finished. But do you see that actually people now tend to focus on, hiring for short-term impact, or they are also talking about, okay, when I hire now, I want to have, or I want to try to build a long-term improvement in my own team or in my own company. What is the, let's say, the theme right now when people hiring? Is it only for short-term tasks? Oh, I need to get this done, so I need to find someone, or more and more company actually looking for hiring and then retain people as long as they can?
Yeah, good question. I sadly have to say a lot of companies still hire just so they check all the boxes. So the security is very much considered as a cost, and therefore they are not willing to spend a lot, and they use a small and quick band-aid. And sometimes the manager knows I'm gonna leave my company in a couple of years anyhow, or I go on retirement. So they're not having a long-term strategy for their security and also retaining talent. There's a small shift, but I think for a lot of companies, it's still the quick fix and making sure the regulatory procedures are ticked off, and then we move on. We made it again for a year, and lucky us. And some companies take it very seriously, and that's also when you want to retain and attract talent. If you can showcase that you really take it very seriously, then those people also want to work for you. And if they have the feeling, yeah, I'm just here to make the internal and external auditor happy at the end of the day, then they probably leave your team rather quick.
One last one, I promised. So, any suggestion how to promote jobs in cybersecurity more? Because if you just put a typical job advertisement, maybe you will attract the same group of people. But then, if you also want to attract people from a different field to move to security, any suggestion how you can promote what you are doing there a bit more attractive?
And do you mean really specific in the job description, or writing the vacancy, or just
It
what
can be
you
both.
sell?
It can be both.
Yeah. Um, I would focus on explaining the long-term vision, and again saying that security is at heart, and it can be sort of an enabler instead of just a cost position. And what I shared in the beginning as well, like you don't need to be that technical. So if you say, hey, we want to educate the next generation, and yeah, we need you. Remember that presidential banner, but there's the work that you're gonna do is very important. So perhaps somebody is a historian now, or a teacher, but that's super noble as well. But I think the job of a security professional will become really more and more important, especially with also the war and the cyber warfare that's going on a global scale. I would also try to promote that your job is very important, especially if you're in a critical infrastructure environment, or you work on IT security in a hospital, something like that, or banks. It's crucial for our society. So your job is affecting a lot of lives, and I think that's something really nice to share.
All right, then I guess we can wrap up tonight's webinar. Once again, on behalf of Norea and also ISACA Netherlands, thank you very much, Lawrence, for your time. And for the rest of participants, once again, thank you. Don't forget to register yourself for next week's webinar as well. And then until next week, I would like to wish you a very pleasant evening. Thank you very much.